Welcome yet to another episode of Blocks and Barriers with your host, Tracy, the health coach. Today, I am so privileged and honored to have a special guest with us today by the name of Tony Kelly. Tony Kelly is a London-born advocate with a remarkable journey from Jamaica to Birmingham, with over 30 years in government and a master's degree in social legal studies. Tony has dedicated the past 12 years to raising diabetes awareness as a Diabetes UK community champion and NHS ambassador. Having managed his own type 2 diabetes through diet and physical activity for 19 years, Tony is a living testament to the power of lifestyle change. He's featured in media. He delivers workshops globally and was recently honored with the British Empire Medal for his outstanding contributions to diabetes awareness. So I am so privileged and honored to have him here. Welcome, Tony.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Tracy, for having me.
You're welcome.
I hope I do justice.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I feel like your own bio is a whole podcast by itself. So, Tony, you were born in London, but you were raised in Jamaica. So tell us about your childhood, a little bit about yourself, really.
Yes. My parents decided at an early age to send me off to the land of their birth, which you mentioned is Jamaica, a little district called Whitehall in the parish of St. Thomas. So I was raised there while they remained in England by my grand aunt, who was a teacher, my grandmother, and my granduncle. And as a child growing up, age 8, 9, 10, 11, I saw relatives of mine in the little district of Whitehall, St. Thomas, who all had diabetes. Starting from the top, some had strokes. And this is painful to talk about, but it's reality. Some had strokes, some went blind, some had heart attacks, some had kidney failure, or what some people refer to as renal failure, and had to leave the country areas to go into Kingston onto the dialysis machine to have their kidneys seen to, because their kidneys packed in, so to speak. Some had lower limb amputations, chopping off of toes and feet, and some died early in their 50s, 60s, 70s, prematurely, or what we in the Caribbean would say, gone too soon. And as a child growing up, I would ask my relatives, what is the matter with them? And Tracy, all they would say to me is, they have a touch of sugar. So they minimized or trivialized or downplayed this very, very serious medical condition by referring to it as a touch of sugar. And whoever listens to this podcast needs to understand diabetes is more than a touch of sugar. It is a very, very serious medical condition. Now, some people are going to say, we've never heard it called a medical condition. Yes, some people, and it will be in the textbooks and on the internet, will know it as an autoimmune disease or a non-communicable disease or a chronic disease or an acute disease, any of those. But when I was trained, and I'll come on to that later, by Diabetes UK, they said to me, Tony, for easy reference, please refer to it as a medical condition. So listeners out there hearing this and saying, well, he keeps on talking about medical condition. It's one and the same thing, but I prefer medical condition. So I went on, having found all these relatives of mine with this so-called touch of sugar, which we know it's not. I then went on to become, after high school, I trained as a teacher at Michael Teachers College in Kingston, Jamaica, and taught in the high schools in Kingston before returning to the land of my birth, but never went back to London. When I came back in 1979, I came to Birmingham, and I've lived in Birmingham ever since. And suddenly started to put on the weight. I used to love track and field. So Usain Bolt, the stadium he used to run in Kingston, I've run in there even before he was born. Trust me, for high school, college, and youth club, etc. But I started to pile on the pounds. It was cold and miserable outside, so I sort of forgoed doing any of this sort of being very physically active. And then 19 years ago, my wife noticed the 4 key symptoms that I might have type 2 diabetes. And I always at this point bring up the hands. 4 T's. T for tired, T for toilet, T for thirsty, and T for thinner. Tired, toilet, thirsty, thinner. I was displaying all of those, Tracy. And in particular, apart from losing weight, in particular, during the night, 19 years ago, was getting up 3, 4, up to 5 times during the night to go to the loo or the toilet. My wife kept saying, something's wrong with you, something's wrong with you. But I'm not going to generalize, but in a sense, most men are not in touch with their feelings or the emotions. And I was one of those men, in denial, like the ostrich, the largest bird on the planet, at the first sign of danger, buries its head in the sand, hoping the problem is going to go away. That's most men. Women are the complete opposite. A twitch, an ache, or a pain, they make an appointment and go and see the GP, or they go to the clinic or the health center or go to the hospital. Men gone to the rum bar or to play domino or to watch the cricket match or to watch football or to do anything not related to their health and their body. And I was one of those. I'll put my hands up. And she kept nagging me. And she's heard me speak on television and radio all over the place and said, yes, I was nagging you. So I took an early morning sample of urine before eating anything. That's the key thing people need to know. Before eating, early morning sample of urine down to my GP surgery. And she put a dipstick in and held it up to the light and it changed color. And she said to me, you have blood glucose or blood sugar. That's the same thing in your urine and there shouldn't be any. But she said, for a definitive answer, I'm going to send off, not your urine, I'm going to send off from your arm a sample of your blood, which will give a definitive answer. Because she already thought, I think you have type 2 diabetes, you know. But she said the lab test, the blood test will determine that. And it did, Trace. It came back as an early Christmas present 19 years ago. And I thought straight away, of all the people in the little district of Whitehall, St. Thomas, and the suffering that I saw. And I thought, I have a wife, I have a daughter, didn't have a son-in-law yet, I now have. And I thought, I'd have relatives here as well. I'm not going down that route. So I made the conscious decision, listeners and viewers, to make the lifestyle changes, the behavioral or lifestyle changes to keep the complications I alluded to at the start of the interview at bay. So that is why I have managed to go for 19 years by, and we'll talk later on about the physical activity I do and the sort of diet that I lead, healthy, well-balanced diet. Don't get me wrong, we have to eat our breadfruit and our yam and our dasheen. That's part of our culture, you know, and our ackee and so on and so forth, and a hard dough bread. But later on, I'll talk about portion sizes and moderation in more in all things. So I came back to England, couldn't teach over here because Mrs. Thatcher and our government of the time said you'd have to go and retrain for 4 years. Tracy, I'll tell you, and I'll tell all the listeners, the education system in the Caribbean and Africa and Asia, trust me, it's far superior and better to the education system in Britain, any day. So I was not prepared to go back and do 4 years of teacher training. My wife did. We got married and she came here in 1981. But she did go back and do 4 years of teacher training in order to teach in the primary schools here, where she taught at a school for 25 years. I went on a different route and I went into the criminal justice system and trained as a probation officer and later got promoted to be a senior probation officer. And I studied at Birmingham University, the Birmingham University, where, as you mentioned at the beginning, I did a master's in social legal studies. And I worked in the probation service for the best part of 25 years. Prior to that, I was a residential social worker, gaining experience because they said, I can't get a grant immediately. The fact that I'd come here, although I was born here, you have to be living in Britain and paying taxes for 3 years to be classed not as an overseas student. So I thought, well, let me work first. So I worked in the social services, residential social work for 6 years before going and doing my what was known as a certificate qualification in social work course and the diploma in social work and my master's as well, and then worked in the probation service for all those years, then took early retirement. So after taking early retirement, but prior to early retirement, my boss said to me, Assistant Chief Probation Officer, she said to me, there's going to be a Diabetes UK conference in Wolverhampton, which at the time, 12 years ago, June gone, was the diabetes capital of Britain. And she said, they want somebody to come and talk, but not somebody who is on medication, someone who has managed their condition without taking any medication. You're at work every day. You've gone 14 years in this organization without a day off sick. You'd be the perfect person to go and speak to the assembled group about what you do to manage and control this medical condition. So I went, and that's the first time ever in a public arena I spoke, because as a trainer within the equality, diversity field, inclusion field, I do a lot of training for staff, but never ever spoke about my health issues. But she said, no, you'd be perfect. While I was there, Diabetes UK, who were at the event, somebody named Shalene Sandhu, she came over to me and she said, my gosh, you're articulate, you're eloquent. You stood up there and spoke for 10 minutes without any notes, and it came all from the heart. And everybody says, where's this young man from? And she said, you need to come over to Macedonia and help us. We want to train you and bring you on to Diabetes UK as a Diabetes UK community champion. So she trained me, and I have not looked back, and I did a lot of work for them. And then I got pinched or poached by NHS. They used to be called Clinical Commissioning Group, but now they're known as the NHS Birmingham and Solihull Integrated Care System, ICS, and the IC Board, Integrated Care Board. So I've been with them now for about 6-7 years. And basically, Tracy, I go, as you said at the beginning, at the start, all over the country. I knock on gurdwaras, mosques, temples, churches, residential homes, office blocks. And I have, you notice me in my diabetes NHS as a volunteer. Remember, I'm not paid for doing this, but I have about 12 of these different colors. Then I have the hoodies to match. And if I go on the train from Birmingham to London, Euston, or 30,000 feet in the air, I stand out. And sometimes when I go on the plane, people start clapping, especially during the COVID period. And I wonder what I say, thank you to the NHS, you're an NHS worker. And I have my cards with me, my contact cards, and I hand them out, and people call me for engagements and say, oh, I met you on such and such a flight, or I met you on such and such a train going from here to there. We want you to come to Manchester or Liverpool or Birmingham or wherever, or Bristol, to come and share with us your lived experience, your reality. So my health disclaimer to the listeners, because when I go abroad a lot and I'm on the radio stations, people phone in and they say, can we speak to the doctor from England? I say, excuse me, you probably didn't hear me at the very beginning. My health disclaimer, anytime I do an event, whether locally or regionally or nationally or internationally, I start off with my health disclaimer. But some people might tune in late or come in late, and they say, but you're so knowledgeable. The information you're giving out to us, that's what we would expect from the diabetic nurse or the diabetic doctor or the nutritionist or the dietitian. I say, well, it's my lived experience, my reality. I've lived this for 19 years. And sometimes you can't get better than asking a patient to come and share with an audience what it is like to be a type 2 diabetes and manage and control it without medication. I'll give you one example. The NHS just celebrated its 75th anniversary last year, since it was formed in 1948. For the 70th, they had a 2-hour live session from the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and they wanted somebody to come and talk about the diabetes. And everybody said, there's only one person we can think of, it's Tony Kelly. So they invited me. The first question the woman asked me whilst interviewing me on live television, and I have it, we recorded it, I have it. She said, so Mr. Kelly, you are a diabetes sufferer. I said, excuse me? You got that wrong. I am not a diabetes sufferer. I accept there are people who do suffer from this medical condition. Don't get me wrong. But Tony Kelly is not one of them. I am living with this medical condition. I am managing and controlling it. Please never call me a diabetes sufferer. So she apologized profusely. And by the time I got home, my wife said to me, you know, about 20 people rang the phone saying, gosh, we love that answer that Tony gave on live BBC 2 television, NHS doing their celebratory 70th anniversary. And he's saying he's not a sufferer. Yes, Tracy, in Jamaica, I saw firsthand suffering, which was why when I was diagnosed 19 years ago, after my wife kept going on and I went and got the testing. And even when I went to the NHS, the GP, she looked on the screen and said, do you realize up to that point, 19 years ago, you had not been to this surgery in 8 years? Now, what I'm saying to the folk listening is we need to go and get our medical checks done. Some of us might drive a Porsche, not me, or a BMW, or a Lamborghini, or a Volvo. You go and get it MOT tested yearly to make sure it's roadworthy. The brakes, the oil, the this, the that. I am saying to people listening, your body given to you by Jah, Jehovah, Allah, God, whoever you worship, is a far more important implement or tool than that motor car. So I say to people in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, in parts of America, every time you need to go and get a health check done, it's money, money, money. You have to pay. The NHS in Britain is free. Go and get your health checks done. And don't sit there and when the doctor looks at you and says, oh, you look all right. Ask the doctor if they have X-ray vision to see through your body. They have to send off for your blood test because diabetes in particular can remain in your system having its wicked way at you for 10 years with no symptoms, no tired, no toilet, no thirsty, no thinner, which is losing weight, no blurred vision, no sleep, slow healing of wounds and cuts. And by the time you notice things start begin to happen and you rush to your GP, the horse has bolted and gone through the gate. So I'm urging people, your health checks is of paramount importance. Don't think because you're macho manly in your 30s and have all of this brawn and muscle, or you're a woman and you're looking right as ever, that there might be underlying problems inside there. And if in doubt, you must go and get it checked out. And my famous motto is, my grandmother taught me, prevention is better than cure. Absolutely. So that I would urge people to do. Go and that's for men who don't want to go. Take the woman, the wife, the spouse, the girlfriend, the mother, grab them kicking and screaming and say, you're going with me. Tony Kelly says you must go. I am taking you to go get your health check done.
Yeah. And for you, Tony, what was it that made you switch when I know now you're saying your wife recognizes that she was nagging you, but yes, for you, what was the switch that made you take that urine sample for testing?
Well, when I thought, because she's kept saying, I think you might have diabetes, because in my case, it's hereditary. It runs in my family. And when she started mentioning those words in the nagging to me, but you can't be getting, and you're losing weight, and you're tired, you've slept. But of course, my sleep has been interrupted by me going to the loo 4 or 5 times. And she said, you're drinking so much water. Those are all the signs there. And I was paying no attention. And after the nagging went on, I thought, you know what? I'm going to go get checked. And when it was proven beyond any doubt that I have type 2 diabetes, I decided there and then, thinking back to my childhood and the suffering I literally saw in Jamaica, the blindness, the strokes, the heart attacks, the kidney failure, the chopping up. Even my aunt, my grandaunt, she had to lose her toes. And I thought, no, it just brought it all flooding back. The memories came. And I thought, I've seen it firsthand. Why would I want to when I can get the best care here with the support of my wife and daughter and son-in-law and the best healthcare in the country? Why would I want to just ignore that and carry on eating 6 tablespoons of rice and peas? I want listeners to hear that, instead of 1 tablespoon of rice and peas. Because all carbohydrates we eat break down into our body into blood glucose or blood sugar. What those people in the cabin say, oh, me have sugar, as if it's some, not to be, oh, it's sugar, what's the big deal? So I made the changes then. I'm so glad I made them. And people marvel at the fact that I've had this condition for 19 years, well controlled, no medication. And when I go for my feet checkups, they're always good. The woman says to me, the diabetic nurse says, my God, these are some of the best kept feet I've seen, diabetes or no diabetes. And then when I go, I don't wear glasses at all, but I go and get my eyes tested every year, free on the NHS. Anybody with diabetes can get their eyes tested and not pay for it. It's a big word, diabetic retinopathy screening, but basically it's diabetes eye screening, not ice cream, by the way, because some people sometimes say, did you say ice cream? And I said, no, ice cream. So they put the drops in the eyes at the optician. And if there's any things at the back of the eyes, sort of the optician will say to you, I don't like what I see forming at the back of the eyes. But remember, the optician cannot diagnose your diabetes. The optician advises you, you know what? Go down to your GP surgery and get a blood test done. That is the definitive thing. Now, some people say to me in passing, Tony, you know, the optician did tell me that, but me not bother take no notice. We're just going on for the next 3-4 years. And honestly, I feel like slap them because there are 4 countries in the Commonwealth where blindness from diabetes is rampant. Starts off with blurred vision. Jamaica, Belize, St. Lucia, and Dominica. So many people in those 4 countries I've mentioned who did not realize that some of them seem to think, well, I'm in my 50s or 60s or 70s, and I'm getting blurred vision and going blind because of my age. Pack that in. It's nothing to do with getting old. It is a diabetes having its wicked way at the back of your eyes. And if you go and get your regular checks once a year, here in Britain, free, they can tell you it's there and that you need to do certain things. You need to eat more healthily. You need to do more physical activity and so on, and it will go. It's the same with prostate cancer. I have to bring that into the equation, digress just slightly, whereby most men, going back to the ostrich, in terms of they're having problems with their waterworks, stoppage of water, as we'd call it in the Caribbean, and they tend to suffer in silence. Prostate cancer, some people, it's an enlarged prostate, okay? And remember, in every male, the only organ in the body which increases in size as you get older is the prostate. Every other organ you have as a man decreases, the prostate increases. So it might not be prostate cancer you have, it might be an enlarged prostate, or you might have picked up an infection and have prostatitis. However, go and get yourselves checked because prostate cancer is one of the easiest cancers to cure if caught early. And I stress, and the doctors out there said, Tony, we're begging you in your diabetes events, just digress slightly and mention that for the men, for the sake of the men. Because women go, for the cervical cancer and the breast cancer, and they go and get the mammary gland done and so on. Men we're a hard lot.
I know, like for you, say, with that experience of seeing your family members and all the complications, and for you, there was no way you could just not do anything. But somebody else will go through the same. They've seen all these things happen in their family, but they don't switch. And for the men, what do you think it is that you've seen all these complications, but you're still not doing something? What do you think it is?
Some of it is men want to be seen as macho and manly. So they're not in touch with their feet. Men don't cry. When I need to, I cry. Let the tears out. That is a sign of release of the stress and the tension. Men are macho, men are manly, men want to be seen as, I am superhuman, I'm Superman, or so on. And as I said, they suffer in silence. They've got to get rid of that cultural myth that, I can't be seen to be crying, I can't be seen to show my emotions or so on. I must suffer in silence. Come on, get real. Men out there, get real. Go and get yourself checked. Go and get yourself examined. Get your health checks. The same way as I said earlier, you get your car examined, so too with your body. It's the same principle. Yeah. And most men I speak to, there are a lot of men's groups forming up and down the country. Some men struggle if they're in a group with women. So a lot of men's groups are being formed. I know of 3 within the West Midlands, and they invite me at least 3 times a year because they have new members coming. And they said, Tony, you need to come and speak to these men because they get you, they understand you. Sometimes there's an issue, Tracy, where 2 people, a man and woman, are in a relationship. Because I had in Warsaw 2 Asian doctors, husband and wife, come to one of my events. And at the end, the Asian woman came up to me with her husband, and she said, all I kept doing when you were doing your whole presentation was hitting him with my elbow in the side. Because she was telling him, you see what that man is saying? And that's all I've been. What happens is when you're in a relationship with somebody, it goes in one ear and out the other, or you block your ears. Although they were both doctors, you know. I am independent, I am neutral and impartial. Independent, neutral, and impartial. Yeah. And the fact that he was able to hear it from me, a complete stranger, and it was resonating with him more than hearing the wife nagging him, although they're both doctors. He said, my gosh, more people need to hear you from a patient perspective because you're not sugarcoating it. You're not coming from a medical perspective. You're coming from your real life lived experience. And he says, you've taught me something here. I'm going to have to go and start doing the things that you have suggested. Because although he was telling patients to do it,
he wasn't doing it himself.
Doing it.
Yeah. And what do you think it is about people listening to you that even someone in the medical field can really be moved to then do something, even though they know it? What do you think it is that's the value of you sharing your story?
I keep the language simple.
Yeah.
I don't speak with a hot potato. I'm not saying all doctors do, but some doctors speak with a hot potato in their mouth. Some like to use a lot of acronyms, medical terms, and jargon, which go way over the head of the patient in front of them. They need to keep it real. They need to keep it simple. And people say to me, Tony, there's something about your style and your approach. We get you. We understand you. You just break it down in such a simple way without being patronizing or condescending.
Yes.
But it is done in such a way that people say, we're understanding you. So that's part of the problem. We're not at Cambridge or Oxford or Durham University now, speaking to other medical students. You're out in the field practicing, and you have to think of cultural competence, cultural sensitivity. You have to break it down. So, for instance, some doctors like to talk about impaired glucose regulation. And when I go to these conferences, I said, please, in communities, do not use those words. Most people, 99% of people won't understand that. Say instead, listen, lady or gentleman, you're on the borderline of getting diabetes or pre-diabetes. The prefix pre means before. You've broken it down in simple terms that somebody will say, oh, if I'm on the border, that means if I'm not careful, I'm going to get the type 2 diabetes myself, or the word pre. So you need to use language that is simpler, straightforward, and cut out the acronyms, the medical terms, and the jargon, keeping it very simple and straightforward. And people will say, we get you, we understand you, you know?
Yeah.
And another tip I give, I go to some events, I don't care who's going to listen to this, but I go to some events and I might hear a man or woman, Asian, African, Caribbean, white person shout out, I'm going to do a quiz and I want them to do it individually. And one of them might shout out, oh, I forgot my reading glasses. Now, a lot of people are all at medical school don't have a clue what they mean by forgot the reading glasses. What they're trying to say to you in a very roundabout way is they are unable literacy to read and write.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to have those sort of understanding. You might be talking, you might be a dietitian or a healthcare professional or diabetic nurse or the doctor with the patient in front of you, and they're so animated and so on. Once you take out a piece of literature or pamphlet and say, and by the way, here's this, have a read of this, suddenly the arms fold and the body language changes. And then you start to say, oh, well, this person doesn't want to engage with me. Have you thought that this person's ability to read and write, and because it's so embarrassed, they don't want to tell you that. So once you see that happening, you think, let me strategize. Let me use another technique in order to engage them. Let me read what's on this on the pamphlet, the leaflet, because suddenly they've gone from being so animated to being so quiet, and then you think, oh, you've lost them.
Yeah.
You have to think creatively and outside of the box. And this is what I do when I do medical students and NHS staff and so on. I say, it's not a one-size glove that fits all. And this applies to the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, called NICE, does mention that the average reading age in Britain is 10 years.
Wow.
So there are a lot of people out there, believe it or not just in the African Caribbean community, in the white working class community and the Asian community, who are unable to read and write. The literacy levels are such. So we need to speak in such a way. And when I do groups, I go to some Asian communities. And some of the Asian communities that I go to, Tracy, their language is limited. But I am so animated. And the stuff I do when I'm doing the physical activity, like Mr. Motivator, some people say like Mr. They come with translators, interpreters to do the sign language and so on, and interpreters. Sometimes I sit down and I say, "But why are you sitting down?" They say, "You see this bit that you're just doing now?" They understand it clearly what you're telling them to do in terms of how you're demonstrating and your approach and so on. They might not understand some of the grammar you're using or so on because English is not their first language, but you're so animated and so demonstrative in how you do it that they get the picture. They understand you. And that comes with, I suppose, practice. From being a teacher back in Jamaica, we were taught skills as how do you, it's about communication. You can't be wearing this white gown and the stethoscope and having that distance from the patient. You have to get to the patient's level. The same in a pharmacy. If somebody comes in and you're a pharmacist and you're trying to tell them about this, I remember I had a bit of a cough recently and I went to the pharmacy and I went to the pharmacy recently and these are sort of questions you have to ask. She was going to give me, but because I know I was onto it, she was going to give me some cough medicine for me to take so I don't have to be heading to a GP surgery. And she gave me this one, and when I looked on it, it says sweet. And I thought, this cough medicine won't be for me. So I had to ask her, but she should have asked me that question, if, in all honesty. Are you diabetic? Do you have type 1 or type 2 diabetes? Because you will then need a sugar-free cough medicine. Those are sort of standard questions you should be asking somebody. It's because Black people are more prone, African, Caribbean, and Asian people. So that's a sort of standard question you should ask everybody, not just African, Caribbean, Asian, but white people as well.
Did they ask you what medication you were taking? Because then from there, I know since my background is a pharmacist, there are certain questions we should ask, but not always are they asked. So then
I just said I'm on no medication at all.
Okay, yeah, but that's a very good point, because for you, your situation is different.
But they should be asking the questions, what medication are you on? Because that will have some impact as to which of the cough medicines would be best for you. Right. Yes.
But it's a good point, because now for you, you're different to the others in that you're not taking medication, but you're managing it. So we do need to sometimes adjust the questions, because we have just standard questions, but as you said, one size doesn't fit all.
I'll give you another example. In the early days of my diagnosis, I used to go down once a year to get my bloods done. And they would put on the bottle HbA1c. I have the sickle cell trait, and a lot of Black people have either the sickle cell trait, sickle cell anemia, or thalassemia. And the standard 2 to 3 month HbA1c blood glucose test monitoring, that I cannot do. I have to take something called the fructosamine test. Standard HbA1c is 2 to 3 months. The fructosamine test can only tell you what I've ate or drank for the last 2 weeks, only the last 2 weeks. So in the earlier days, they used to put HbA1c on the bottle and send it off, and it come back saying it did not work. So after about the third occasion, and those was early days of me learning all about this diabetes, I said to the doctor, why is it have I got to come down for another blood test? She says, because especially the trainee nurses and the students aren't aware of your condition, the sickle cell. I don't have any issues with sickle cell. If my wife had been born with the sickle cell trait along with myself, then our daughter would possibly have the full-blown sickle cell anemia. So she said, we'll have to put something on the screen. And apart from that, you're very assertive, Tony. Whenever you come in, just say to whoever is taking it, what are you going to put on the label? And I asked them, and some of them would say HbA1c. And I would just say, oh, no, you're not. I don't wear these when I go down there. And they said, well, are you medically qualified? I said, no, but I can tell you about my condition. You need to put on the label, on the little bottle, and it's a yellow cap you must use, fructosamine. And I said, what's that? Then I have to go explain it to these trainee nurses or these student nurses or these newly qualified nurses what fructosamine is and who tends to get it. So they're on a learning curve as well. And they say, you've taught us something because that wasn't discussed with us at nursing school. Yeah. And we need to be more aware of that. And I say, yes, but you can't have people coming back and forth because you're not aware. I think they put it on this screen now. So it flashes up, take the fructosamine test. But knowledge is power, and some people aren't aware of that, At least I am,
Yes. Yeah.
But another thing I said to people, when you go to your GP, if at all possible, take an advocate with you. Take someone with you to see the GP. Some people put these GPs on a pedestal and they're like demigods. And I take the view, nobody knows your body better than you do. And I take the view that take somebody, an extra pair of eyes and ears. So even me, when I go, people say, well, Tony, you don't need to take anybody. You can't speak for Britain. I said, no. But the GP might be saying something which I might not have caught. If I have a friend or so on with me who I can confide in and they come with me, it's a far better approach. And I sometimes go with people and the doctor will say, I make the doctor do whatever they have to do because they only have a 10-minute window to do whatever they have to do. And at the end, I said, well, doctor, can you explain why you're prescribing such and such for this patient? My friend was coming. And they would turn to me and say, well, are you medically qualified? I said, no, but very much patient expert, ambassador, diabetes community champion ambassador, and live with this condition. And then some doctors give you one medication, then they give you another one to counteract that one, then a third. So you end up walking out with 3-4 medications. And I think, well, and then sometimes I have to say in the presence of the doctor, this person needs to probably get fit, needs to lose weight, needs to look at their cholesterol level, needs to look at their blood glucose level, needs to look at getting slimmer and trimmer. How about social prescribing? And the doctors will look at me and say, how do you know about social prescribing? And I will say, excuse me, I talk about that in every presentation that I do. Enable and empower the patients to make the lifestyle changes. And it's a NHS who brought in, 6-7 years ago, the National Diabetes Prevention Program, whereby people can go, not just for people who are pre-diabetes, other people who need to lose weight or tone up or what have you. They can go on these courses. The social prescribing budget comes out of the GP's budget for them to go and do gardening, allotment, or Zumba, or Pilates, or yoga, or swimming, whatever they take their fancy. They ask for the social prescriber within the GP's practice, and then they get told, these are the options. Which one would you like to take on board? And that needs to be, in some places where I go, ask the audience, 50, 60 people, hands up those who know about social prescribing. Tracy, not a hand goes up.
Yeah.
And I think, and then I have to explain it. And people said, Tony, thank you for explaining. Mm-hmm. I'm going to put this medication aside now. I said, no, under supervision. But you must go back to your GP surgery and ask them to look at registering you for the social prescribing route, doing stuff that you can do. Because some of the people don't have, especially those who are on benefits, those who are on low income, and those who are not working on wage. It can be gotten, the social prescribing, whether dancing or the limbo or the whatever you want to do, the swimming or the aqua, it comes out of the GP's budget. I have to pay for everything. I'm not complaining, but I do, for the benefit of the people listening, I do Zumba every week for years. And people laugh at me and I say, well, this is the issue of men. I am the rose amongst this 20-25 women thorns. I'm there for a purpose, to keep diabetes at bay. So the Zumba, Pilates, aerobics, badminton, yoga, and I never knew how to swim because my grandmother used to say, "You're my favorite grandson of all of them. You're not going to the river, you're not going to the beach, surrounded by the lovely blue Caribbean Sea in Jamaica. You're not going to it, you will drown." So I've never learned to swim. And then 3 years ago, I saw an article where Linford Christie, one of Britain's greatest runners, learned to swim just recently and does open water swimming. And I thought, well, if it's good enough for Linford Christie, it's good enough for Tony Kelly. So I registered at Birmingham University in the swimming lessons, and I've gone from beginners to intermediate. And not so recently, they said, you're very soon going to be going into the advanced class.
Amazing.
This issue of Black people can't swim and we'll sink.
Exactly.
No, we got to stop it. And then some woman said, "Oh, Tony, the chlorine, it's going to..." You're about saving lives. You're about getting fit. You might end up having to save your grandchild or your nephew or your niece's life. Go and learn to swim, please. I urge people. And if you don't want to swim, fast-paced.
Find something.
Find something, gardening, climbing the stairs, mowing the lawn, cleaning the windows, forming a walking club, 4 or 5 of you, and go. And so you're all motivating each other. Do things that limbo dancing, whatever. Do things that you fancy and stick to it. Not on your own. If you try and do it on your own, trust me, after 2 weeks, you're going to give up. Do it as a group. So you all motivate and encourage, and even the ones who are a bit slower, you say, come on, we'll go to the next station further up the road or up the hill, and don't walk on flat surfaces. Find gradients, and they have a lot of hills and steep hills and gradients within Britain, and you notice the weight coming off you, because in particular, we have the pancreas, which is situated right across 6 inches in length, across the belly button or navel string, that produces the hormone insulin. And I want your readers and listeners to understand, insulin regulates the food we eat and drink. That's the job of the pancreas, to make insulin. If you have too much fat in that particular area, around that belly button navel string, preventing the pancreas from making insulin or not making enough, that's when diabetes comes your way. Plus, some people who are skinny or thin, or in Jamaica would have said mager, can also have fat around their liver and their pancreas and get type 2 diabetes. So if you see a skinny person and they tell you have diabetes, please don't dispute it. Please don't tell them it's only fat, overweight, morbidly obese, or obese people who can get it. People who are skinny or as slim as a rake can also develop this medical condition. And in 2021 alone, 6.7 million people worldwide died from diabetes complications. And in Britain alone, every 8 seconds, someone is diagnosed with diabetes. If those figures don't alarm you, I don't know what is. Because people talk about COVID-19 and coronavirus. I'm afraid that diabetes is way above that in terms of, and it's all to do with the whole heap of food, the oils, the fats, the salt, the saturated, the sweet food. And as I said at the beginning, cut down on the carbohydrates. Some people said to me, Tony, I'm going to give up the ice cream and the donut, and I'm going to give up the condensed milk and the syrup and the nice fruit cake and so on, and I'll be fine. I will stress once again, the carbohydrates we eat: potato, yam, dasheen, plantain, hardo bread, rice, all of those carbohydrates, which we do need as starchy food for energy, we need to eat, but much smaller portion sizes. I'll do my hand like this. The portion of rice, cooked rice, by the way, you eat on your dinner plate should fit in the palm of your hand. Any more rice than that, and some people say to me, Tony, he's a big man or a big woman, that will only go to my eye teeth. I'm afraid that's what Diabetes UK says you should be eating. And in the 3 types of rice you should aim for: a wild rice, W-I-L-D, wild rice, brown rice, and the third one is basmati rice, white or brown. All the others, cut down on those and eat those 3.
Amazing. And
Thank
I
you.
love that. Yeah. You mentioned earlier about medication. You touched on it because some people will hear, oh, he's done it. And so I can stop my medication.
No, no,
So
no, no,
what's
no,
your
no, no,
view?
under medical supervision. Never, ever. And some people, in one of my slides that I show under cultural myths and misconceptions, when we were growing up in Jamaica and other parts of the Caribbean in Africa, Panadol, paracetamol, ibuprofen, and Fensic, and all these medications, they weren't even heard of. We had all different types of herbal remedies like cerasee and all sorts of different remedies. That cerasee, there's another one that Corella, the Asian community use Corella a lot. There's another one called tuna or Cinco Bible or and Tree of Life and all these things. When I was poorly as a child growing up, had a bit of a fever or so on, my grandma would have sent me to go get soursop leaf or this leaf. And by the time she cook it and boil it and rub it and then rub me down, by next morning, I'm back at school. I'm as right as rain. So I'm not wanting people to suddenly poo-poo and put their nose up against herbal remedies. But having said that, if you've been placed on medication for a reason, then you need to be mindful and take your medication. But there's nothing wrong with herbal remedies because we still use cerasee and aloe vera and tuna and various other medications that are out there, moringa. So we mustn't just be dismissive of them. I say that to people. But if you're on medication for a reason as a type 1 or type 2 diabetes, all type 1 people have to take insulin anyway. That's a fact, which they then inject with a pen into the stomach area. Because that's where the pancreas is. Some people with type 2 are on insulin as well as on metformin and other drugs that are out there. You can't just put the drugs aside and think, well, okay, I'm going to be fine without them. If you're on drugs, medication of whatever description, they must be for a reason. But before you get to that stage, I know of some GPs who immediately put people on medication. And I'm saying, no, the words I use when I do these conferences, enable and empower the patients to make the lifestyle changes. Give them a 3 months and say, go and do this or go and do that, go and get yourself physically fit and so on. And I tend not to use the word exercise, Tracy. The word exercise conjures up images. You want the person to go to a gym.
Yes.
That's not what I'm agitating. You can do physical activity right in the comfort of your home. There are lots of YouTube videos there, whether baked beans or plastic bottles with water, and you do your physical activity and you stand up and you sit down. Another thing I say in my presentations, the remote control. I beg you, hide it. Hide it. Hide. When I came to England in 1979, we never had remote control. Every time you wanted to change your channel, you got off your proverbial and you went and changed. Nowadays, it's beep, 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 beep. Hide the remote control, put dead batteries in it, or take out the batteries. Then another one on top of that is something called Alexa or Siri. Alexa, Siri, open the windows, open the curtains, open the door, turn on the radio. We never had that in our day of growing up. Alexa and Siri, these remote control devices, close the blinds, Alexa, answer that phone. And I think, oh my gosh, which is why we're sitting down so long. We need to do more movement. Come on, get up, go turn on the light, turn on the radio, turn off the TV. Those are the things. You would have done some physical activity and allowed the blood within your body to circulate. You cannot be sitting there for 7-8 hours leading the sedentary couch potato lifestyle. You're not doing yourself any good. Please, I'm asking people to be more active,
Yeah. And for what diabetes is, all the complications it has, do you feel the 10-minute appointments that people have with their GPs is helping them in that fight against diabetes?
Not at all. Not long enough. Which is why I encourage it. Let's, like you do quite a lot of events at your church and in the community and so on. The GPs, I have a lot of GPs in my family. They're stretched, they're stressed, and a 10-minute slot isn't going to give you enough time to go through. That's why some places have the diabetic nurse, or they have the nutritionist, or they have the dietitian. But you also need to go to tried and tested websites, not fake, false, or phony websites that are going to tell you to send out for this potion or send out money for this pill or this tablet. Yeah. Remember, folk, there is no known cure for diabetes. Please remember that. Some people, they manage to do so well and it goes into remission. But if they go back to eating unhealthily and not doing physical activity, it will return. But what I'm saying to people, the websites you need to go to are the National Health Service, properly clinically approved website, or Diabetes UK, the well-known charity. Those are the two I would say you must urge to. You have other people, quack and fake and false and phony people coming up and putting up website. Oh, and this person, and they send you these videos all on WhatsApp, and this person cured the diabetes, and this person did that, and so on. Stay far away from them, please. Just the tried and tested NHS website or the Diabetes UK. All right, or come to places like go and see in the community pharmacies. You might have not enough time at your GP surgery, but the community pharmacies, they're not only there to dole out medication, they're also there to give you advice and say, well, have you thought of this? I think you need to do some swimming, or you need to do that, or give them, or they might have charts to say, let's look at your food intake, what sort of foods and how much calories you need to eat per day, and cut down on the fats and the oils and the salt, because salt causes high blood pressure and hypertension, as we know, and the salt, the oils and the fats and the sugars, and all the fizzy drinks. I tell people, for instance, a lot of people go for fizzy water, just water and it's fizzy or aerated or carbonated. Readers and listeners, viewers, when the rain falls from the sky, is it fizzy, carbonated, or aerated? It's plain, as we'd say in Jamaica, plain so-so water. No bother with the carbonated fizzy water, because at the end of the day, for it to be fizzy, that means they put a chemical or something in it. And the chances are, you might think it's water and you're not going to put on weight. Trust me, there's something in it which has made it fizzy. And they talk about spring water and a touch of this, that, and another. They were all packed with sugar. Try and go for, see, I have mine here with me, plain water.
Yeah. Excellent. And I love that you said, we have to use our community pharmacies. And even on that note, say somebody had a query or this herbal remedy and I'm taking medication, then your pharmacist can check with you if it interacts with your medication. So we have to use these resources. Yeah,
very important, because just like how some people are on blood thinning tablets, as you well know, and should not be having grapefruit juice or grapefruit because it counteracts the blood thinning tablets. I am told that for some people, the Karela, which is the bitter melon or bitter gourd used for the seasoning of Asian meat dishes, I am told that for some, not all, that it can interact and interfere if they're on certain types of diabetes medication. So one needs to be mindful of that, checking sure that you're not defeating the whole purpose of
exactly. And so for people with diabetes, there's that, as you said before, when you're asked in an interview, you as a diabetes sufferer, so there's some stigma with diabetes. So how do you think people should try and take care of their mental health when they're living with diabetes?
Well, for a start, it's not the end of the world. When you get diagnosed that you have it, some people do start going into depression and mental health sets in and so on. And you need to start and think, well, what places must I look for my support? Within your family. Start with your family. You might be the only one in the household who has diabetes, but they need to also make sure that in their cooking, you might not be the cook or they might be the cook. They have to prepare the food in such a way that there's less of the salt, sugar, this, that, and the other, white flour and white bread and white sugar. So start with the family, if you're in a family, and get them to support you. When you go out to eat at restaurants, you need to make the restaurant staff know. People might think, they nowadays ask, do you have any allergies? They'd like to ask that at restaurant. But you need to then say, I have type 2 diabetes, so I'm very conscious of how you're going to prepare the food we're going to order. But look for support. There are diabetes support groups out there all around the country. Try and find one, because the more times you go into a support group with others, you realize, I'm not on my own. No man or woman is an island. The same thing that person just said in that meeting today. That's it. I've learned so much from hearing that person or so on. Some people have been in support group for years, and some are sort of shy to join. Having diabetes is not the end of the world. And you mustn't feel the stigma attached to it. And I can't go and make, because some people used to say to me, Tony, why do you have to make your diabetes known to all and sundry in the earlier days? I said, well, there's no stigma attached to it. Just like in present day now, there should be no stigma attached to HIV and AIDS. It's there. It's a way of life now for some people, in terms of, and they have medication to control it. So I am not into, I've got to keep it a secret. I have friends who have had cancer, and I only find out when they've passed.
Yes.
And I think, what's that all about? What is that all about? We all have the propensity to probably develop cancer at some stage within our life. But how we live our life and so on. And the same will apply with diabetes in that sense. Look for support networks within your family, within your community, within the GP surgery, whether it be the dietitian or the nutritionist. Sign up and register with Diabetes UK, because they'll say they have some lovely recipes on their site, and the lovely community chats on there. And so I see a lot of chats on Facebook. I tend to not ignore them, because the ones on Facebook, everybody comes with a different field and a different approach on Facebook. And I think, you can easily get misled in some of these Facebook diabetes. Go to ones which are more structured. That would be my take. And avoid Facebook if you can. Social media can lead you down the wrong path.
Exactly,
It's a matter of, and once you get grip of that mental and realize, hang on, I've got to do these things, discipline yourself to be eating well and doing physical activity. That's how, because your mental health and your physical health, the two go hand in hand. It's not just, we'll look at the physical health and then leave it at that. They're intertwined, they're married, they're combined, you know. And if one's in a good state, the brain is functioning properly and so on, and the mind is in a good state and mood, and you don't have dark clouds over you and so on. Some days you're going to have a down day here and again. But it's a matter of, hey, I'm going to pick myself up. I'm going to go listen to such music. If music is a means of therapy, or I'm going to go to the church, the Gurdwara, the mosque, or go out with my friends. You need your pick me up time, because you will find times that your blood sugar might be high, and you think, oh my God, I've tried everything possible and it's still high. And you think, well, do a chart, look at what you're eating, and say, hang on, is it? And you keep monitoring, you notice, and you can get in touch with Diabetes UK. They're open Monday to Friday. They have a helpline Monday to Friday, 9 o'clock till 6 o'clock. And even for communities where they speak Punjabi, Urdu, Gujarati, Arabic, Hindu, they can actually get an interpreter and come back and speak to you.
Lovely.
The language barrier. So that when I go to those communities and they say, well, they don't know who to speak to because there's a language barrier. So no. Diabetes UK have interpreters Monday to Friday, 9 o'clock to 6 o'clock, who are far more educated than I will ever be, because they've been trained to sort of deal with all aspects, you know? Diabetes.
And you mentioned, for you, diabetes is in the family. And for a lot of us, even in my own family, we have diabetes in the family. So how can we support people in our family? Because like you said, we'll have events, we'll have rice, we'll have potatoes, we'll have plantain, we'll have chapati, and then the chicken stew has potato in it. Then we'll have dumpling, then we'll have a teaspoon of coleslaw or veggie. So how can we actively support people in our family when we meet up knowing they have diabetes?